It is not your spontaneous intent to see the wholeness of God and the glory of God right there. Continue.
Certainty does not require action. When you say you are acting on the basis of knowledge, you are really confusing knowledge with perception. Knowledge provides the strength for creative thinking, but not for right doing.
This is because knowledge shows God's work as already done. Continue.
Perception, miracles, and doing are closely related. Knowledge is the result of revelation and induces only thought. Even in its most spiritualized form, perception involves the body. Knowledge comes from the altar within and is timeless because it is certain. To perceive the truth is not the same as to know it.
Exactly. Perception is variable. One moment you can perceive truth, and the next moment you can perceive error. But when you know the truth, as a direct experience of truth, there is no variableness to it. It is certain. Okay. I'm going to hold comments down because of the time, and so that we can cover as much as possible.
Right perception is necessary before God can communicate directly to his altars. To his altars?
To his altars.
I didn't quite understand multiple altars, is why I was wondering about that.
Which he established in his sons, plural.
Okay. There he can communicate his certainty, and his knowledge will bring peace without question.
Now, why is right perception necessary? Because right perception is the ability to distinguish between truth and illusion, to recognize where an illusion is operating, to recognize where an illegitimate imposition seems to be holding a sister or a brother in bondage. Because without being able to discern the difference between right and wrong, you cannot make the choice for right. And in making the choice for right, turning toward the altar, if you cannot tell the difference, you will not know that there is a call for correction. You see?
God is not a stranger to his sons, and his sons are not strangers to each other. Knowledge preceded both perception and time, and will ultimately replace them.
It is you coming back into your right mind, which, because it knows the truth, experiences nothing unlike it to distract you from it. Continue.
That is the real meaning of Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And before Abraham was, I am. Perception can and must be stabilized, but knowledge is stable.
Yes. And so, at this point, what you're all engaged in is a process of stabilizing perception. Learning to recognize when something is going on that is illegitimate, meaning not God ordained. And in being able to recognize that, not vacillating from positive to negative, to willing cooperation with an illusion, to taking steps to correct it. You are learning to not be fooled, not to be sucked in on a daily basis, from hour to hour, where never again, when you see someone who doesn't look well, do you say, "Poor dear, she really needs to be home in bed." You find yourself catching that thought and correcting that thought by at least acknowledging this is not her birthright and it's illegitimate, and she doesn't even really have a mind of her own with which to create that illusion and bind herself with. All that is there is the presence of God, presencing himself, herself. That kind of a statement, even though it's drawn from memory because you heard me say it, or you've realized it in the past, that kind of thought is discernment and constitutes a mental discipline that allows you then to say, "Father, I would know the truth about her. Father, show me your fullness in her." And then you listen. That's turning toward the altar. Continue.
Fear God and keep his commandments becomes know God and accept his certainty.
Yes. To know God, you have to have your attention turned toward God. What God is has to be more important than what you think you are and what you think your brothers are and what you think your obligations to your brothers are. As well as to the mutually agreed upon definitions that the two of you, or more, have made commitment to. And the minute you're willing to abandon those, the minute you're willing not to give the value to them that you have in the past, you can shift your attention to God so that you might be filled with the direct experience of truth. In other words, an experience of knowing that constitutes knowledge. But again, as I said last week, not knowledge as a bit of information to be stored away in memory to be used again in the future. It is a living knowledge that can only be gathered in the moment of the conscious experience of what truth is. And it's therefore always new. The experience of God is always new. Okay?
If you attack error in another, you will hurt yourself. You cannot know your brother when you attack him. Attack is always made upon a stranger.
Why? Because you trust a brother. You know a brother. You feel your kinship. Attack is always made upon an estranger. Someone you are estranged from. And yet it's your brother whom you have estranged yourself from. And it is this lapse of memory that he is your brother, and who seems to be left when you have forgotten who he is, that you attack. Continue.
You are making him a stranger by misperceiving him, and so you cannot know him. And so you cannot know him. It is because you have made him a stranger that you are afraid of him.
And the best way to make a brother out of a stranger is to remember your father and look for your father in him. Because if you can find your father in him, then you've found your brother. And you cannot be estranged. And then the messengers that you send out to him will return to you confirming his brotherhood. And God has been glorified, and correction has occurred, healing has occurred. Continue.
Perceive him correctly so that you can know him.
Yes. And I've restated it a number of times. When you look at your brother and sister and say, this is not the truth about them, this is an illegitimate imposition upon them, it is not his or her birthright, and not only that, he or she doesn't even actually have a mind that can create this imposition and bind her. That is all at the level of perception. It is still at the level of perception. But it is a truer perception that sets a tone in your mind that allows you then to ask God to reveal to you the truth so that you can know him or her. Continue.
There are no strangers in God's creation. To create as he created, you can create only what you know, and therefore accept as yours.
And the only way you can create only what you know is when you have asked God for the direct experience of truth, which, for lack of better words, you could call God's truth. And then you find yourself creating the conscious experience of what God is being there, which isn't an actual creation at all of your own, but is the direct experience of God being all there is right there. And healing has occurred, correction has occurred, and there doesn't seem any longer to even be the suggestion of something unlike God. And the one who, the poor dear who ought to be home in bed, is obviously in exactly the place she needs to be to carry on the joyous activity that she came there for, with happiness and health and perfection, because correction has occurred. Again, it hasn't been a process by which you come into your peace while she's still miserable. That's not correction. That's not the evidence of knowing. Continue.
God knows his children with perfect certainty. He created them by knowing them. He recognizes them perfectly. When they do not recognize each other, they do not recognize him.
And he recognizes them perfectly because he recognizes himself in them. And you will recognize them perfectly when you see nothing else but him in them. And when you see him in them, you will know him in you. We will end there. I want to point out something to you. When you are willing to turn to the altar to learn of God, what the truth is, so that you can give voice to God's truth, and you do it for your brother, which is the only legitimate reason for doing it, it is an act of love. And that's the real event. Not the communication, but the extension and the receipt of the act of love. You have watched Paul this evening. Make that choice under circumstances that he felt were disturbing. And he was willing to persist in abandoning any value that he gave to being upset. And he did it for you. He preferred to see the glory of God right here over an experience of self-righteous indignation. And I know all of you are grateful, and I know all of you are blessed. I would have you learn from this more than anything we've talked about tonight. Because your brother, your sister, is worth more as an object of your affection than any ego reaction that might entice you to stay in a state of misery in which no correction can occur, in which no healing can occur, in which no relief can occur for you. And so, it might not always be easy to get past the desire to relish in the discomfort, the wonderful discomfort of self-righteous indignation. But do it. Doing it is the leaven that leavens the whole lump. the little bit that affects all. When he does that, I can say, I love you all. But he would not have been able to give voice to that truth if he had insisted upon relishing his delicious discomfort. You see? Our next Thursday evening gathering will be a week from Sunday at 2 o'clock. We are going to change the day and the time in order to make it easier for more people who would like to attend to participate. I look forward to seeing you then. And in the meantime, realize that there are no private thoughts. And when you see something that you know doesn't embody and reflect the glory of God, challenge it in your mind. Even if you are simply saying, that is not the truth about her, that is a lie about him, I do not join in it. And then say, Father, I would like to experience the wholeness of you right there where I seem to be seeing something that I know is illegitimate. Even though the word know there is not yet a direct experience of the truth. And be the little bit of leaven that leavens the whole lump. A little bit of leaven blesses everyone, blesses the whole. But you know what, more than anything? You're going to find yourselves not as dragged down and depressed as you are by the constant rehearsal of, wow, she doesn't look so hot today. Boy, he's really a grouch today. Boy, I could have done without running into her. You depress yourselves by careless thoughts. Careless thoughts. And because there are no private thoughts, your careless thoughts can seem to reinforce the dream. Be the leaven. Be the leaven this next week and a half.